So, why am I fighting Chicago traffic to get to O'Hare Airport? Well, I've been looking for a rust-free third-gen Camaro for years, off and on, and I finally found one. This story is about how I bought it, why I want it, and what my plans are for it. I've wanted a Camaro, specifically a third-gen F-body Camaro, since I was about 5 growing up in Toronto, Canada. My friend's dad lived across the street at the time, and he was an undercover narcotics officer and would get new undercover cars every few months. One time he had a blue IROC Camaro just like this one. It was brand new at the time, and I would admire the back of that car from across the street in my living room. I hoped one day I would have one. Little later on in my life, another family friend took me for a ride in his red IROC in Owen Sound, Ontario, which further cemented my love for these cars and that era of vehicles in general. Fast forward about 10 years later, in my senior year of high school, I started looking for one of my own. It would have been my second car at the time, but instead I ended up finding a 1991 Pontiac Trans Am GTA in green. It was an awesome car as well. I still didn't keep it very long, and now, being in my 30s, I've again started a search to find a Camaro like the one I saw when I was a kid. Living in Chicago, I'm used to finding all the rusty ones, which turned me off of buying one up here. Instead, over the years, I would look on Facebook Marketplace in North Carolina, where I'd lived and owned my Trans Am. I'd also look in Dallas, Phoenix, Southern California, and other rust-free markets. Well, just last month, this white hardtop Z28 popped up with the 5.7-liter automatic option and no T-tops, which is overall my favorite spec for these cars. The 5.7s never came with T-tops nor a manual, so I was pretty interested to find one just how I wanted it. Even better, it was a late model third gen and in the final year of third gen production, so it was also the last year of assembly at the Van Nuys, California facility before it moved to Quebec, Canada. It being a late model, it had the high wing on the back, and it also was supposedly rust free, so I figured it was worth a look. My buddy Mike still lives in Raleigh, so he agreed to check it out for me, and here's some screenshots of the walk around. So I struck a deal with the seller, and the seller delivered it to my buddy Mike's work. But now, how do I get it back to Chicago? The cheapest way, or so I figured, was to fly down there and drive it back myself. I attempted that, as you saw earlier in the video, driving to Chicago. Here's what happened there. I get to the airport, and the 8:45 departure time gets delayed once, gets delayed twice, 3 times, 4 times. There's mechanical issues with the airplane, and all of a sudden I'm looking at a 2:15 a.m. arrival time in Raleigh, which was pretty unappealing to begin with. Once you factor in picking up the car from my buddy's office, maybe grabbing a couple hours sleep, and then driving it back on 4 hours sleep at most, that became pretty undesirable as well. And that's assuming the car even makes it and there's nothing mechanically wrong with it on that 12.5 hour drive home. So all of a sudden, not a good option. Instead, I'm looking to ship it now. So next I log in the UShip and create a shipping bid request. I've used UShip a couple times before and I've been generally very happy. I also went to a bunch of third-party sites outside of UShip to try to get some quotes that way too. Here's where things get a little strange. One of the third-party sites, Transport Saver, I believe is the name, texted me and offered me shipping for a really great rate, way cheaper than I'd saw elsewhere, and also they could be able to get it by Friday, which would be really nice for me. I was super suspicious, and turns out it was a legitimate offer. I kind of took a leap of faith and just hoped that this company would come through for me. They did, so big thanks to them. And the car arrived unscathed just a couple days later. Hello! Well, it made it. I was not sure it was going to get here, but it made it. The guys were pretty much on time, very friendly, very helpful, and they delivered it to my door. Even though their truck was a little too big to fit down my street, but it's here. I just drove it around the block. It's actually pretty good mechanically. There might be some brake pads that need to be replacing on the back, but it's actually pretty good mechanically. Cosmetically, of course, I knew it was bad to begin with, and the interior has a lot of stuff that needed to be taken care of. The steering wheel is kind of floppy, and of course all the other stuff I knew about, but it made it, and it's actually pretty decent in terms of drivability. So I'm pretty happy. Let's get into the garage and I'll take a closer look at it in there in the shade. Sounds like it's got some aftermarket Flowmasters or something. Let's see what this brand says. MagnaFlow. These two pipes are probably not going to stay. I think I'll put just regular downturn pipes hidden behind the bumper like they're supposed to be. Interior, I'll show you. Locked. In the interior, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Obviously the seat's bad, I knew that. I knew this is a common issue on these cars. The steering wheel's always messed up. My Trans Am I had years ago is the same way. This twists around, which is super annoying to me. I'll definitely have to get that fixed. The previous owner said that he unplugged some thermostat or something because he was worried it would overheat, so he made it so the fan always runs. I think I do hear the fan, but no signs of overheating, so that's okay. But the other three seats are in pretty darn good shape. Carpet's actually pretty clean. And really it just needs like a vacuum and some, Armor All or leather protectant stuff. One thing I liked about this car was manual mirrors and manual windows, because these regulators often go bad just due to the size. Headliner was bad too, but luckily there's a yardstick that's going to hold up the headliner. So, really, I don't have to do anything. Just kidding. And the mirror did break off as it was being loaded in North Carolina, so I'll have to fix that. I knew about that as well. Handbrake doesn't work, cracks in the dash, but I'm going to cover for that. Once I got past the initial sitting in an early 90s American car for the first time in many years, and my disappointment with that, I've actually started to really like this car just in the brief time I've had it. Stay tuned for the next video where I'll go over everything wrong with this car and how I'm going to fix it.